I'm excited to welcome Dr. Aadeel Akhtar, the CEO and founder of PSYONIC, which develops advanced, affordable, and accessible bionic limbs. Dr. Akhtar actually started PSYONIC during his PhD in the Neuroscience program here at UAUC. They have created a prosthetic hand known as the Ability Hand, which is innovative in many ways, including that it's able to move all 5 fingers, it's the fastest available, and is impact resistant. I was lucky enough to take a tour of the company at Research Park over the summer, and since then they have actually moved to San Diego. So I was able to see how exciting and innovative their work is, which you will also be able to see. They have won many awards, but I'll name just a couple. Last year, Dr. Akhtar was one of MIT Technology Review's top 35 innovators under 35, and was also one of America's top 50 disruptors in Newsweek. He is also currently serving as an adjunct assistant professor at UC San Diego. And we are very excited to hear his talk today.
Thanks for the intro, Shannon. And so thanks for having me, guys. It's interesting to be back because usually I've been here for the last 12 years. I lived in Champaign-Urbana and we just moved to San Diego about 3 months ago, and it's just been a whirlwind of an experience. And so it's like I feel like I'm at home at the same time. It's like, oh wait, I'm not in Champaign-Urbana anymore. So I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you guys about some of the where we've come from, as well as some of the new stuff that we're going to be working on, especially since our move to San Diego. And we've got a cool demo that we're going to be doing at the end of this talk as well. So I'm Aadeel Akhtar, as Shannon mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of PSYONIC, and we develop advanced bionic limbs that are affordable and accessible for everyone. And usually when I give these talks, I like to start off with a video that the University of Illinois made. It was for commercials during the halftime of football games. And let's see if we can get this to go up. There we go.
How did they do that?
What did you do? Where's the English building?
Could you go over that again? Hey, can I check that?
When's that paper due?
Can I tell you my idea?
How can we make it cheaper?
Do you think this will work?
How'd that feel?
So if you couldn't tell, that was me at the end of that video. And I personally like this video a lot because it highlights the journey of starting off as a young kid who is, curious about the world to, developing these bionic limbs that are controlled by our muscles and our nerves in particular. And for me personally, this journey started when I was 7 years old. I was visiting Pakistan. That's where my parents were from. And that was the first time I met someone with a limb difference. She was my age, missing her right leg and using a broken tree branch as a crutch, and that's what inspired me to go into this field and develop advanced prosthetics for those who can't afford them around the world. And so I went to Loyola University Chicago for undergrad, and like most South Asians that go there, I was pre-med. And it wasn't until my sophomore year of undergrad that I took my first computer science class and realized I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about coding and engineering and building my own programs, that I wanted to find a way that I could combine my passions in prosthetics and neuroscience and clinical medicine, along with engineering and computer science. And so right down the street in downtown Chicago is a hospital. It's called the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. It used to be called the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. It's the #1 rehabilitation hospital in the US for the last 32 years. And this was around 2007, 2008 that they made these huge breakthroughs in neurally controlled bionic limbs. And so this is Amanda Kitts. She lost her left arm above her elbow due to a motorcycle accident, and she is controlling this bionic arm just by trying to make those same movements that she did prior to her amputation. So when she tries to bend her elbow, sensors are picking up her neural activity from her muscles to actually bend the elbow, and when she rotates her wrist, and when she actually makes a pinch, etc. And this was incredible, right? This was the perfect combination of clinical neuroscience, of computer engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, all in physical medicine, rehab, all in one. But the big problem was that that arm that you guys just saw there, it cost over $100,000 to make, right? It was sponsored by the DARPA and part of this revolutionizing prosthetics program that was like a $1 billion program that they had funded to build these bionic limbs. And it turns out that there are over 10 million people with hand amputations across the entire world. 80% of them are in developing nations, and less than 3% of them have access to affordable prosthetics. So what you see on this guy's right side, this is known as a hook prosthesis. This is the most prevalent prosthesis in the world right now, right? And the way this works is that you have two steel pincers and you've got a cable that's attached to your shoulders. And when you squeeze your shoulders together, you'll see the jaws of the hook open. And when you relax your shoulders, the hook will close, right? So it's fairly straightforward. And so because of that, it's also very low cost, but it looks like a hook, right? All it can do is open and close, and you have to use your shoulders to control it. So it's not necessarily the most natural to control it. On this man's left hand is what we call a myoelectric prosthesis. Myo meaning muscle, electric meaning, well, electric, right? And the way myoelectric prosthesis works is that you will use muscle sensors, specifically EMG or electromyographic sensors. And if you guys aren't familiar with EMG, you're probably familiar with EKG. It's the thing that you see in the TV shows and the movies where you go to an ambulance and you place that sensor on their heart, and then the monitor goes beep, 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 right? And then if they die, it goes beep, right? Imagine those same sensors, but instead of placing them over your heart, you place them over your muscles. And then when you flex your muscles, you'll see a huge burst of neural activity happening from your muscles. So we'll get into all those details in a little bit. But the next step up from that is what we call a multi-articulated hand. And so that is one where all the individual fingers of the hand can actually move. But the thing is, as soon as you get to that level, these hands start getting very fragile, very expensive. They're very slow, they're very heavy. And on top of that, if one of the users of those prosthetic hands tried to grab something or hold something or touch something, they wouldn't be able to feel it at all. And so that's what we had set out to solve. So I ended up finishing my bachelor's in biology from Loyola. I got a master's there in computer science. I taught there for a couple of years, and then I joined the MD PhD program at U of I back in 2010. And so I got another master's in ECE, electrical and computer engineering here, then finished the PhD in neuroscience. And then I finished the first year of med school, and 3 months ago, I officially left the med school to run PSYONIC full time. But I can at least say I'm an alum of the med school here in the MD PhD program in particular. But we set out to solve all those problems, right? So our hand can do advanced muscle control. So instead of just opening and closing, we can do multiple grips. And we're going to show you as well what the future of this is going to be looking like with individual finger control with proprioception and everything. We built the hand to be super robust to impact, and we did it using low-cost material, so we're able to get it covered by more insurers. And finally, we are the first hand on the market to give users touch feedback, and we're going to touch on all of these things, starting with the muscle control. So I was mentioning EMG, right? So the way EMG works, right? When you try to bend your muscles, when you try to flex your muscles and bend a joint, your brain is sending signals down your spinal cord, down your peripheral nervous system to your muscles, and then the muscles will actually amplify the motor units that are being innervated by the nerves coming from your peripheral nervous system. So I'm telling my elbow to bend, my biceps are going to start flexing, and that's going to recruit a bunch more muscle fibers, and it's going to amplify the voltages coming from those neurons. And then that's what you see in this graph over here, is that amplification measured from the skin of all the muscles that are muscle fibers being used to flex your bicep in particular, right? And this next video that I'll show you kind of illustrates that further, where I have 8 EMG channels hooked around my forearm, and I'm doing different grips with my hand, and you'll see the different patterns of muscle activity coming through. That lab showing all 8 channels, and if I squeeze, you can see all channels are active. If I flex, extend, do a pinch, 3-finger grasp, hand open, hand close. And by the way, this video was actually taken in like coordinated science laboratory right over there, like I don't know, like 10 years ago or something like that. So yeah, it's been like a trip down memory lane, seeing a lot of these rooms and these buildings. And so the important thing to notice from that video and this image that you see on the screen right here, right, is that when I made different movements with my hand, right, when I was making a pinch versus a fist versus like a tripod grip, different patterns of muscle activity were occurring in my forearm, and we can pick up those different patterns of muscle activity on through the amplifier and the electronics that we've got over there. And then we can use a machine learning algorithm to classify, oh, these are the muscle signals associated with a pinch, or this is what's associated with a fist or a tripod grip or a lateral grip or wrist flexion, wrist extension, etc. And this was really cool. But when I came to the University of Illinois, there were no researchers doing anything in prosthetics here. And the closest thing we had was I joined the lab of Professor Tim Brettel, who of all fields is actually in aerospace engineering. So if it wasn't interdisciplinary enough, we just threw aerospace engineering into it as well, right? And one of the things that Professor Brettel worked on was brain-machine interfaces. And actually, if you walk around here, you'll see some of like his posters on brain-machine interfaces from a lot of my colleagues who graduated from here as well. And so one of the first projects that I had worked on when I came here was to control the flight of a drone using this muscle classification system and these machine learning algorithms that we were developing for the EMG on the forearm. And this video was actually taken, I think, in the 5th floor tower room of Beckman here. So it might look familiar to you guys. All right, so when I rotate my wrists, the drone takes off. When I point them to the right, it rotates clockwise. When I squeeze my fists together, the drone will fly forward. When I point my wrist to the left, it'll rotate counterclockwise. And then when I rotate my wrists again, the drone will land. And that was a really fun application of what we could do with these machine learning technologies that we were developing. And that was actually our capstone project for the IGERT, the neuroengineering IGERT that we had here. And so my colleague who was in that video, Jamie Norton, he was a neuroscience graduate from here as well. And so I'm actually going to see him at SFN next week. So are you guys going to be at SFN as well? Yes. And just so you know, it's in San Diego. So if you guys want to come visit PSYONIC, we would love to have you guys come visit and see the lab out there. It's a lot of fun. I know a lot of you may have seen it here in the summer over in Enterprise Works in Research Park. So it's an even bigger space than that we've got in San Diego too. So please come visit us there. But so that was a fun application of what we could do with that technology, right? But it wasn't prosthetics. And the reason why I got into this field was to build prosthetic limbs. And so we had established a research collaboration with the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago at the time. But the thing is, they're 3 hours north of here. They had all the expensive like bionic limbs and everything. But we would only get like, a half hour to work on it, a week maybe. And if we broke it, then it'd be like a really big problem. That thing is super fragile on top of that. And so we were like, we're engineers at the University of Illinois. Why don't we build our own prosthetic limbs? And so that's what we set out to do. And so around 2013, 2014, there was a huge boom in consumer 3D printing. I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with 3D printing now, but right at around that time is when it just was like booming, right? And so we got our first MakerBot in the lab. And over the last 7 years, we've actually gone through 9 different prototypes of the Ability Hand, and we've got the first 5 shown in this slide here, with the first one on the top left being based on a open source humanoid robot that you can build for like $1,000 called InMove, and we modified it so that you can control it with your muscles. And then we iterated on that to make the hand look more human-like and packed with many more sensors over time. And so we're going to first focus on those first 2 hands that you guys see there. And Martha, you might remember a bunch of these too from like back in the day, when we were building all these when I was a student here. And it was April of 2014 that we met this man. This is David Krupa. He is the CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization called the Range of Motion Project. And they're based out of the US, Guatemala, and Ecuador. And their whole mission is to provide prosthetics to those who can't afford them. So he is actually an alumni of the University of Illinois as well. And he was coming back to campus to win an award from the International Studies program. And he was giving a talk on prosthetics in developing nations. And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I met up with him and I told him, hey, we're 3D printing our own hands in the lab. Is this something you might be interested in? And he was like, yeah, maybe. So I showed him around the lab the next day, and then I didn't hear back from him again. That was kind of sad. But 2 weeks later, I get this random email from him out of nowhere that literally said, dude, I felt this vibe between us when we met, and we've got to figure out a way to work together. And that's when Dave's and my bromance began. And then 2 weeks after that, we get I got another email from Dave saying that he was able to secure funding from the US Embassy in Quito, Ecuador, to have me and another graduate student working with me go down there and actually try out our hand on a patient. And mind you, we've never really got this hand to really work on ourselves in the first place. And now we're going to be doing it on a patient in Ecuador. And it has to be a hand that can actually like potentially fit on him, right? So we had to switch from this hand you see on the left, top left side, where all the motors and the electronics were based in the forearm. But if you still have your forearm, you can't physically place that stuff there. So we had to move all of that into the hand itself. And we were working on that second design, which was another open source design from a company called Open Bionics. But we modified all the electronics and had our own motors in there, and had our own machine learning algorithms to control that hand. And so fast forward to the day before we leave for Ecuador. We don't have anything working, but we have all the components. So we figure that we will actually go down there, and we're going to be there for 2 weeks. We can figure it out when we're there. And then when we do it with the patient, it's going to be fine. So we fly down there. Dave picks us up from the airport. And the first thing he says is, okay, so we've got a meeting with the US Embassy tomorrow, and they want to see everything working. And we were like, oh man. So if that began 2 weeks of all-nighters, basically trying to get this hand to work. And we immediately got to the hotel, and we got to work right away. And so we got the hand to a point where if I flexed my wrist really hard, I could barely get this hand to close. And if I extended my wrist really hard, I could barely get this hand to open. And the way it's supposed to work, right? I easily make a pinch and a 3-finger grasp and a key grip, and the hand responds in all those ways. But we figured this was something, we need to show them something. And we're just gonna have to run with this. And so this next video shows us in the hotel room trying to grab this bottle.
Are you recording?
I am.
Okay, so we thought that, maybe the diameter of this bottle was a little bit too big. So let's switch over to a Coke bottle. Okay, so maybe we needed to reprogram some things a little bit more too. And so we reprogrammed it, and we decided to try again. And this time we were able to grab the bottle. So again, not exactly how we wanted to be able to control this seamlessly, but again, we had to show them something. And we were really worried that, we're going to bring this giant mess of a system through like US Embassy security. And then when they see it, they're going to be like, really, this is what you came down here for? This is what we're sponsoring. And so we were really braced for that, like when we showed them this demo. And much to our surprise, they were all floored by this demo, right? They were like, this is amazing. Okay, so when you do this with a patient next week, we're thinking we're going to have 3 newspapers and 2 news crews come and cover the event. And we were like, oh, we've never done this on a patient before. And now the bar is set really high. And then they start asking us questions like, oh, where are you guys from? And we said, we're from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And they said, you're from the University of Illinois. In that case, we're going to bump you up to all the international news stations, because it turned out that at the time, the president of Ecuador was an alum of the University of Illinois, and any chance that he got to promote the university, he took. So if the bar wasn't set high now it was set super high, right? The next day we met our patient. And so this is Juan Suquillo. He lost his left hand 35 years prior due to machine gun fire from a helicopter. He was in the Ecuadorian army, and it was a border war between Ecuador and Peru. And in this video, or this picture, we were trying to get him to control the hand for the first time, and it wasn't working. And to make matters worse, he actually had to fly out to Brazil the next day, and he wouldn't be back until the day that the media was coming, meaning that we basically had one chance to get this right in front of international news stations, right? Okay, so 2 weeks of all-nighters, right? So fast forward to the following Thursday, the day that the media was coming. The night before, Dave Krupa, he told us that at 6 a.m., I'm picking you guys up, and whatever you have working at that point, we're gonna have to just roll with it, right? 6 a.m. rolls around. Mary, the other graduate student in Tim Brettle's lab who was working with me on this, and we've been up for about 32 hours straight at this point, trying to figure out what is wrong with this. She's looking at this giant rat's nest of a breadboard. I'm looking through hundreds of lines of code, trying to figure out what's wrong. And then 6:08 rolls around, and I notice this one line of code that looks a little bit off. And so I send Dave a text message, and I'm just like, hey, Dave, I think I might have found something. I just need like a couple more minutes. And he texts me back saying, okay. And it turns out there was one line of code where two variables were switched on the opposite side of an equal sign. And as soon as I switched those two variables, everything started working. When I made a pinch, the hand made a pinch. When I made a fist, the hand made a fist. And had I not figured it out at that time, or had Dave actually come to pick us up on time, then we wouldn't have figured it out. So we were actually lucky that he was late to come pick us up, right? But it's one thing for it to work on me. It's another thing for it to work on a patient, right? So we figure Juan's going to get there at 8 a.m. and the media is going to get there at 9. So we've got an hour to set him up with everything, and everything will be smooth sailing. 9 a.m. rolls around, the media is all there, and Juan doesn't get there until 10. And so the media is already super annoyed. And again, we've got one shot to get this right in front of international news stations. So the first thing that we do is we hook Juan up to all of the muscle sensors that we have, and we try to see his signals the same way that you saw at the beginning of the talk when I was doing different grips with my hand. You could see the muscle signals, right? And every single channel was dead. We weren't able to get a single reading from him. And I was just like, how is this possible? This was just working on me, right? So Mary and I, we go into debug mode. We're trying to figure out what's wrong with this giant mess of a breadboard, while Juan and Dave, they're trying to stall with the media and tell the backstory of the range of motion project and how Juan lost his hand, just to buy us enough time to figure out how we can fix this system, right? And so we had a voltmeter and we checked the voltage on the breadboard, and we noticed that it wasn't giving us the correct value. And usually what that means is that there's something wrong with your power supply. And we were powering this giant mess of a breadboard off of two 9-volt batteries. And we noticed that one of the 9-volt batteries was burning hot to the touch and had puffed up to about double in size. And had we not noticed it at that point, we might have been on the news for a different reason. But fortunately, I had a fresh 9-volt in my pocket. I took it out, we hooked it up properly, and we were able to get all the muscle signals. And so it was like, crisis averted. All right. But it's one thing for us to read his muscle signals. It's another thing for the machine learning algorithm to work properly, and then the mechanics of the hand to respond accordingly and do the right grip. And so the way that this works is that when you turn the hand on, it would undergo a training procedure. And so it would make different movements. So the hand would like hold a pinch for 15 seconds and then a fist for 15 seconds, hand open for 15 seconds. And you're supposed to mimic those same movements, right? So with his left arm, he would try to make a pinch. He would try to make a fist. He would do hand open. He would do a tripod grip. He would relax. And then the machine learning classifier is going to look at that data and be like, okay, the next time you do like a pinch, for example, this looks similar to the muscle patterns for a pinch, and I'm going to make the hand do the same thing, right? And so we have him go through the training procedure, right? He held a pinch for 15 seconds, fist for 15 seconds, hand open for 15 seconds, tripod grip for 15 seconds, relax. I ask him to close the hand and nothing happens. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what else could go wrong at this point? And this is completely serendipitous, but Juan happens to be, so I happen to be Muslim, and Juan happens to be the leader of all the Muslims in Ecuador. And to put things in context, Ecuador is a 99.999999999% Catholic country. So A, to find someone who is a Muslim, but B, to find the leader of all of them and him having an amputation and me actually working with him to build him a hand from across the US or across the world, is the likelihood of that is extremely, extremely low, right? And so we didn't know this before we met, and then when we found out later. And so he turns to me and he says, Bismillah, say Bismillah. And for those of you who don't know, Bismillah is just invoking the name of God. It's something that Muslims say before they do anything. And so I'm just like, Bismillah, okay, Bismillah, right? I hit the reset button on the electronics and the training procedure starts all over again, right? So he holds a pinch for 15 seconds, he holds a fist for 15 seconds, hand open for 15 seconds, relax, or his tripod grip for 15 seconds, then he relaxes. And then I ask him to close it. And this time the hand closes and the media comes rushing around the table, asking him questions. And I take a step back, a huge sigh of relief, and I'm thinking in my head, you are a man of God. And so this next video shows the international news coverage of that day back in 2014.
Un quiteño es el primer beneficiado de una prótesis de mano con ayuda en su financiamiento. El programa es realizado por jóvenes de la Universidad de Illinois en Estados Unidos.
Juan Suquillo es excomandante de guerra. Fue así como perdió parte de su brazo. De esto han pasado más de 30 años.
Varios miembros de mi pelotón sufrieron heridas y particularmente la mía me cobró el brazo izquierdo.
Gracias al avance de la tecnología, hoy puede acceder a una prótesis.
Parte de mí por esto. Vuelto.
Jóvenes ingeniosos y
My hair was cooler then.
para ayudar al prójimo más necesitado han desarrollado una prótesis de brazo mioeléctrico con la posibilidad de retroalimentación sensorial, es decir, sentir como una mano de verdad.
Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out, right? First thing, this hand that you see on the table, right? It's 3 times the size of an average adult human hand, has wires going everywhere, plugged into breadboards, plugged into power supplies, plugged into my laptop, plugged into the wall, right? Despite that, Juan said that he felt as though a part of him had come back. And that's because he hadn't made a pinch with his left hand for 35 years, and he made a pinch for the first time in 35 years. In fact, he forgot how to do it, and we had to retrain his brain by placing a mirror in front of his amputated side, reflecting his intact right hand, tricking his brain into thinking that his left hand was there. And then when he made a pinch with both sides, it reactivated the forearm muscles that he had. And so he was able to make this pinch with our prosthetic hand, right? And so when he said that, that's when I realized that if I go the traditional like academia route, the MD, PhD route, where I go work at an academic hospital and then hold a lab, and then I see patients for like 1 day a week and then do research for the rest of the week, this just ends up as a journal paper. And if we want everyone to feel the exact same way that Juan did, we had to commercialize the technology. And that's when PSYONIC was born. So came back to the University of Illinois. We entered our school's business plan competition, the COSAD New Venture competition in 2015. We did the I-Corps program. So we won COSAD in 2015. We won the Illinois Innovation Prize in 2016. We won several grants from the National Science Foundation the following couple of years. We raised like a pre-seed round. And then in September of last year, the Ability Hand has been available nationwide to patients and clinics across the US. And so that's what the hand looked like then. And this is what it looks like now. And so this is retired US Army Sergeant Garrett Anderson doing push-ups for the first time since his Army days, and holding a 50-pound kettlebell with ease so he can go back to the gym and do also all sorts of workouts. And you can use these to do all sorts of activities of daily living, right? Something as simple as closing the lid of your laptop to feeding your granddaughter for the first time. And so this was Tina's first time feeding her granddaughter, because she could hold the bottle with the ability hand and hold her granddaughter with her left arm. And it's just made a huge difference in the quality of life for our patients, that they can, I mean, they're able to do all these tasks with one hand, but to be able to do it much more easily and much more seamlessly and not have to worry about injuring their other limb, it makes a world of a difference. And so this is what the hand looks like now. And so I've got it right over here, and you guys can all come and interact with it later, and especially when we have this demo up and running too. But all 5 fingers flex and extend, and the thumb rotates as well, right? The way that users control it is through EMG. So the hand itself, like it pops off just like that, right? So this is the hand. It would get mounted onto the residual limb of the user through a socket, and then they'd have muscle sensors that they can use to, EMG sensors that they can use to control it. So I'll pop that back on. It'll go through a quick calibration procedure where all the fingers restart. And then we can do different grips with it too, right? So there's like the finger wave, right? Here's a key grip, or, you know, if you want to give someone a thumbs up, I can slide the thumb over. Here's a power grip, or I can use this to shake your hands. And then we can also control the speed of it too. So for example, here's like a pinch, but if I want more precision on that pinch, I can actually like slow down the speed by flexing my muscles much more lightly. Or I can do it much more quickly as well. And then of course, we've got like your gestures too, right? So if you're at a rock concert, you know, you can rock on. And yes, we can point with certain fingers as well. And all of our patients, that's one of the first things they always ask is, can I make a rude gesture with the hand? And the answer is yes. You can express yourself in that way still with the ability hand. So other things about this, and this is something that I encourage you guys to feel after the talk too. So when I'm touching on this, on the fingertip, the finger pad, on the lateral aspect of the distal phalanx, as well as the medial aspect here, there's 6 touch sensors, and you can feel a vibration coming through. And I said this is the only hand that on the market that gives users touch feedback. So we can put them in all the fingers. Right now we have it in the index, the pinky, and then the thumb. And that way the user can use that to manipulate delicate objects, for example. The fingers are flexible, so they can take a beating. So I can like smash this and it totally survives the impact. We've done push-ups on it, as you saw. We've broken boards with it, martial arts style. I've thrown my dryer for 10 minutes. My house in Champaign, I climbed to the roof of it and dropped the hand 30 feet up in the air. And it was fine after landing 30 feet onto the ground. So this thing can take a beating, right? This is actual carbon fiber on here, so it's super light and super strong. It weighs less than an average adult human hand. This is 490 grams. Average adult human hand is 520 grams. It's water resistant up to the wrist, so if it gets dirty, you literally just take it to the sink and wash it as you would a natural hand. It's USB-C rechargeable, so the same way you plug in your phone, you can plug in your arm. It'll recharge 0 to 100% in 60 minutes. It'll last usually about 8 to 10 hours a day, so 10 minutes of charge will give you like a couple hours of battery life. But you can also charge your arm or charge your phone from the arm as well. So it's another superhuman ability that we like to give our users. But the best part about all of this stuff is that we actually got it covered under Medicare in the US. And to put that in perspective, before our hand really came along, a multi-articulated, fully bionic hand like this was only covered by the military, so VA, or if you had a workplace accident, so workman's comp. And that was only about 10% of the market. And by getting it covered under Medicare, we've expanded access to the most advanced bionic hand to 75% of the market in the US can now afford it. And that's what we're all about, making the most advanced bionic limbs more accessible than ever. And we'll show you some of these videos to highlight some of these features that I was telling you about. So this is 13-year-old Alex Ojeda. She'd never tried a prosthesis in her life. She was born without her left hand. And like within minutes of her coming in, she was able to do like the finger wave and then switch over to different grips on the hand. So this next one is 3 minutes after Dan St. Pierre was fitted with the hand, someone threw him a water bottle and he was able to catch the water bottle that was thrown to him. So these fingers are this is also the fastest bionic hand in the world. It's 2.5 times faster than any of the other prosthetics. So it closes in about 200 milliseconds, put that in context, we actually blink our eyes in about 300 milliseconds. So it's technically faster than the blink of an eye, which is kind of a neat statistic there. And then this shows the robustness of the hand. So on the right side, you'll see a traditional pin joint finger that just broke off entirely when you had this giant hammer on a piston come down. And then our finger design that has a flexible mechanism, and when you smash it, it just comes right back to its original position. And so this is me at State Farm Center arm wrestling against the para-triathlete national champion and losing, unfortunately. So I have to start working out a little bit more to get my revenge on him for beating me with the ability hand. But at the same time, I mean, he can break boards with it, so I don't know how much I want to fight him. So this, if you guys remember that trend of bottle flip tricks, you can imagine it's a lot harder to do with a bionic hand, but because our fingers are compliant and flexible and we have that touch feedback, Kate Kettlehone, a 17-year-old patient who got our hand, she came over to our offices and was just nailing these shots. And we have a full YouTube video of her just like hitting like some crazy trick shots all over our old lab in Champaign and Research Park. Okay, so we can also make the hand walk on its own. So this was a video that we just released for Halloween a couple of weeks ago. And that's me webbed up in our new offices in San Diego. So we have a lot of fun with everything that we've been doing at PSYONIC, right? And so this is Sergeant Anderson doing 360 degrees of wrist rotation, so we made him superhuman. And this video is actually going to be released on Friday, so you guys get a sneak preview of it. But it's part of a much longer video that shows all the we put a GoPro in the dryer, and then we also filmed me with a drone dropping the hand from the top of the roof. But we had Sergeant Anderson in my garage. We had 3 wooden boards and we lit them on fire, and we had him break through them martial arts style. And so this is him breaking 3 boards with the ability hand on fire. So it's come a long way since, the early 3D printed prototypes that we had to these hands now that are super robust and you can do incredible things with it, right? You can also use them for robotics as well. And so it turns out that if you're building a robot that's doing human tasks, we've optimized our hand for humans to do human tasks. So it makes sense that you get the same thing that the humans are using. And so this is a robot, a humanoid robot built by a company called Aptronic that is using our hands, and they're able to manipulate it in different ways. And we actually can put it on any robot that you want, including the Boston Dynamics Spot robot dog, if you guys remember those dancing robots. So this video, we actually did that, and we gave him some lightsabers, and I had a lightsaber duel with Spot. And this is in the lab of Joo Hyung Kim, who is actually on campus here as well in ECE. Someday I will win one of these matches. But yeah, so lots of dexterity that you can use with these hands to do things outside of just prosthetics. And a lot of the problems that we solve for humans are the same problems that roboticists were finding too, with issues with robustness, issues with dexterity on certain tasks and how you might do certain tasks differently with a hand that has less degrees of freedom than a natural human hand. So really quickly, the EMG that we had mentioned before, if you remember that giant mess of a breadboard, we got it to about the size of half of a credit card. And we were actually able to find out that we could use 20-cent hardware store rivets that were stainless steel to be used as electrodes. And we could actually pick up muscle signals from those hardware store rivets. And these are the muscle signals that we could get. And so we went back to Ecuador in 2016, and this time, instead of being on the table, we attached it to Juan's hand, and this was his first time being able to actually control the prosthetic hand attached to him. You could tell we were pretty excited that we got it to work. So we went back again in 2017, and this time he took it outside of the lab.
In our bones, you know, every day we get up and there's just another development, and it's because it is right now, like, this is the nexus of change where prosthetics of tomorrow are going to change thousands and thousands of people's lives. Finally.
And then we went back again in 2018. And of course, the first thing he wants to do when we go down there that time is drive his car. And his car, to put things in context, is it's a manual transmission. So he has to keep his intact right hand on the gear shifter while his bionic hand is on the steering wheel. And there's no power steering either. So he has to maintain a firm grip on this thing. And so my heart was racing the entire time we were filming this while we were driving in downtown Quito.
Automatic, I have my both hands. So while my right hand is using the stick shift.
Yeah, so you can see his right hand on the stick shift right there, and then his left bionic hand is on the wheel. And he's able to adjust his grip on the wheel.
Yeah.
And then he can even do things like switch lanes, turn the blinkers on and off. And then, you know, he can just get back into traffic like it's no big deal at all. And then it also can free up his other hand to, like, you know, gesture at other people too. Okay, so touch, right? So how do we give touch feedback to users? And so underneath the silicone, we've got 6 pressure sensors that we have on the fingertips. So 1 on the fingertip, the finger pad, 2 on the lateral aspect of the distal phalanx, and 2 on the medial aspect of the distal phalanx. And then on the thumb, they're just all on the pad. We use the same circuitry for both. And then we can detect between 10 grams of weight all the way to 10 kilograms of weight, and with a resolution of 1 gram. And like I said, you guys can feel it on that hand later on today, what the vibration is like. So typically use a vibration motor to give that feedback. But another way we can do that, and a lot of my research while I was a grad student here, was on electrical stimulation on your skin. And so by changing the amount of current that we send, the timing of it, and the frequency of it, we can make it feel like different things, like light touch, strong touch, pressure, vibration, pain, the entire spectrum of mechanical touch. The biggest problem is consistently giving that same sensation over time. So always making it feel like a pressure, for example. Most of the time, it usually feels like a tingling sensation or a pins and needles, like your arm is waking up after falling asleep. And so we're still actively researching how we can do that. But we brought down the system to Ecuador on one of our first trips there. And this next video shows the very first time we ever hooked Juan up to the electrotactile feedback stimulator.
How about when I push the button? And so I'm going to tap on it rapidly. Do you feel all the different taps I'm making right now? Yeah. Okay. So I want you to do this. Can you close your eyes for me? And I want you to tell me when I'm actually touching your finger. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And remember, this was his very first time
What I
ever.
want you to try and tell me is whether it's a light touch or a strong touch.
Like strong.
I even tried to fake him out there, but he still got the strong right over there. And so what does this enable you to do? It allows you to do really fine manipulation of delicate objects. And so this is 85-year-old or 80-year-old triple amputee EQ Sylvester grasping a hollow eggshell without cracking it while blindfolded on his first try. Because of the haptic sensation that he has in there and the touch sensors being able to what we call a contact reflex, where as soon as the pressure sensors detect a pressure over a certain threshold, we can automatically slow the motors down. So it gives you much finer control over how much force you want to apply to the object itself. And so where are we going with this stuff, right? So one of the reasons why we moved out to San Diego was to work with the military hospital out there, right? And so we're going invasive with a lot of these different techniques. And so by doing novel surgeries, it enables a lot of things that we can do with our hand in particular, right? So this is one of our patients up in Chicago, actually, and he lives in Pennsylvania, but his clinician is in Chicago. And he got this special surgery that was actually developed at the Rehab Institute of Chicago called targeted reinnervation, where he's missing his arm above his elbow, but his nerves, you have 4 major nerves that go into your arm that innervate all of your muscles and all of your skin or whatever, right? And they reroute them to muscles you still have. So you have 2 heads of your biceps. They're usually used to control, flexing your elbow. So they take one of the heads of the biceps, cut the nerve that's going to it initially, and then reroute the other nerve. And now when you try to make a fist, for example, that other head of the bicep will start to contract, and then you can use an EMG sensor to then control that instead, right? So it gives you a more intuitive way of controlling, degrees of freedom of your hand that you no longer have anymore, right? But those nerves, those 4 nerves that we're talking about, they're mixed nerves, right? They carry motor efferents that go to the muscles. They carry back afferents from your skin, right? So when you feel touch, that way your brain can perceive it. So what ends up happening a lot of times is when you do this nerve reinnervation, is that the sensory neurons regrow into the skin overlying the muscle. So when you touch them on different parts of their residual limb, it feels like you're touching them on their hand that they no longer have anymore. And so our patient here is one of those people who has that particular targeted sensory innervation. And you'll see when I touch the fingers, he's able to actually distinguish every single finger just from touching his residual limb.
So Mike has targeted sensory innervation. So he has different spots on his arm that feel like different parts of his finger are being touched. So on the ability hand, I'm going to touch the pinky. And Mike, where does that feel? Back of my pinky. That's just wild.
So he felt it on the back of his pinky when I touched the pinky. And then he's just going to move the vibration motor around, and that's his ring finger.
So you're feeling a vibration on the ring right there, right?
And then he's able to do the middle finger, the index finger, the thumb. And this is just basically like a conduit into his hand that he no longer has anymore, that we're able to tap into those sensations and those feelings. And so what the military hospital we're going to be doing is actually implanted electrodes directly from the peripheral nerves. And then instead of wearing a socket that goes over your residual limb, we're actually going to put a titanium implant into your bones and then directly connect the hand to your bones. And there's actually already 2 patients in San Diego, the only ones in the US who have this particular surgery that have both the titanium implant and the implanted electrodes. And I didn't even know that until after I moved there. And I was like, oh man, they're in San Diego. How cool, how convenient was that? And so I'm going to, a lot of these pictures and videos are part of a Legendary Pictures documentary that you can find on YouTube, and I can send you guys a link afterwards. But also, if you want to contact us, that's our website. And I was also going to mention that we are actually in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign. And if any of you guys are interested in investing, you can come in as little as $250. We're hoping to get 20 more people to come in by the end of next week so we can have a lot of this stuff amplified. So please, we would love to have you be a part of this bionic revolution. And so I'm going to end with this new demo that we actually put together actually like 3 days ago for the first time. And so some of you guys might have done this with a single hand before, but we're actually able to, you guys will actually be able to control this hand yourselves, or these hands yourselves. And so once this script starts to run, oh, that's because I'm gonna have to kill my video really quick on the Zoom call, so that we can use the webcam on here. But I'll share my screen so you guys can on the Zoom call can at least see the tracking of the hand itself. So hold on, I'm going to stop that and then I'm going to close this. Okay. And then are you guys able to see my screen on the screen share?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so hopefully this will all work properly. Okay, so that's me controlling the hand. And so I should be able to control both hands. So there's the left hand going off right there, and you can see that I'm tracking the other one right over here. And then here, I'm going to restart this again really quickly and then see if we can get both hands to function more seamlessly. And then, all right, let's try that again. I probably have to quit the Zoom call because it's fighting with the video call resources. But you guys will get to try this out right after the Zoom call. But anyway, you saw that when I was moving my fingers around, that the hand was actually mimicking it, and it's a really fun demo that you guys should try out right after this. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you guys have.
This was one of the most exciting seminars. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
So at the end,
Yes.
when the veteran was trying to feel the touch.
Yes.
That's possible because he already had that memory, no? So if you never, so let's say you're born without any limbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you first try that, the memory is not there.
Yeah, so for those patients, yeah, reinnervation probably would not make a difference. Now that being said, there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we don't know, especially with patients with congenital limb differences in particular, right? And so one of the things that, would be fantastic to look into, and so we've got a couple of, like, many of our users are congenital, where and so where they're not thinking of, like, moving like their fingers around, they're thinking, I have these muscles in my residual limb that I'm able to control. They don't really control a finger naturally. And is the video working on here? Let's see. Stop video, start video. Yeah, it's just showing up as a black screen, unfortunately. Yeah. I think it's because it was fighting with the demo that I was trying to do too, so which was using the webcam. But with the patient that you mentioned, yes, he had a traumatic amputation, which is why he was able to feel it. And so one of the things that we're looking into as well is that if you stimulate the nerves of someone who had a congenital limb difference, and then if you try merotherapy like at the same time, could it rewire, use the plasticity of the brain to kind of like regenerate those areas? We don't know. And we're excited to find out, though.
Well, I feel like if the patients are young enough, the
Right?
plasticity would be faster.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
older patients, the plasticity exists. It's just, and
Yeah.
it'll take a little bit longer.
Yeah. Now,
Oh, this is exciting.
Now, that being said, there was a really amazing study / paper that was done by Sleeman Ben-Smaya. He's up at University of Chicago, and Max Ortiz-Catalan out in Sweden. And they showed that there's a limit to the amount of plasticity that your brain has. So for example, they had implanted electrodes, and what they would do is they would stimulate the middle finger anytime you touch like the pressure sensors on the index finger, and then stimulate the index finger whenever you touch the middle finger, right? To see if your brain would actually rewire itself to thinking that your index finger is now your middle finger, right? And they showed that after a year of doing this on a patient, it stayed the same every time you stimulated that nerve for the middle finger. Even though you were visually touching the index finger, it would still feel like the middle finger. So there's a limit to the amount of plasticity. So we don't know. Yeah, it's very interesting.
We have a question in Zoom.
Yes.
Yes, it's me. Hi, Aadeel.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. This is your presentation was incredible. I remember being at the Beckman open house in 2014, where you had the stimulating electrodes, and you had the exhibit there, and it's just mind blowing how refined your hand is now. It's incredible. But I wanted to ask, so. And I mean, this is a highly specialized product that you've engineered specifically with the hand, but I'm wondering, like, do you have any future, like, you know, projections on whether you want to extend into other, like, developing other limbs?
Yeah, and so so another reason why we moved to San Diego is the Challenged Athletes Foundation is headquartered there. And they hold the para triathlon every year, and so they just had it like a couple weekends ago, and it was an amazing event. And we have a 5-year goal that we want to make an ability leg in addition to our ability hand that you can do a triathlon in. So you'd be able to run, bike, and swim with it. So this would be directly osseointegrated into, like, if you're above knee into your femur, if you're below knee into, I think it's your tibia because your fibula is too small. But then also with implanted electrodes, you'd be able to get, you know, very accurate like ankle control and knee control. And that's what we're heading towards. So yes, that is very much in our pipeline.
That is so awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Wow. Martha?
Yeah, this is over the top. Interesting. And I've watched this grow for a long time. But with respect to the plasticity, have you tried training? Because, you know, when you use the mirror and you can actually exercise it, because I think that may be key to making it work.
But it might 100. We haven't tried anything yet because we just haven't had no one has this no one has had this hand long enough or has had the implanted electrodes in combination with our hand yet. Once we do that, though, then yeah, we definitely want to start doing all of those like experiments and seeing can we train that to make it feel like it's actually coming from your hand that you actually never had because you were born without one. Yeah.
I apologize. I have a 5 o'clock person coming to my house, but I have to fix my printer.
No problem.
I look forward to watching your star.
Thank you. Yes.
So for some of these motions, amazing. Some of these motions, are they predetermined on the code, or is it as you're moving it knows how to move?
Yeah, so with for example, with 2 muscle sensors, you control it just basically like this, right? So this one's closed, this one's open. If I open it twice, it moves to a different pre-programmed grip. And then there's like 19 pre-programmed grips that it has Bluetooth on it. So we've got an app, and then you can select which grips that you choose from. And then you can customize the grips too through the app as well. But on this demo with the webcam, when we get it fired back up after the Zoom call, you can actually do position control where everything that your hand is doing in the camera is exactly what the hand is doing over there. So that control is different, right? It's not pre-programmed. That's actually using your nerve data. So if you imagine, so you saw like did you see when my hand was tracking on the screen, right? So let's say I had a unilateral traumatic amputation, right? So I lost my hand on my left hand due to like a lawnmower or motorcycle accident or fireworks or something like that, right? The idea here is I get implanted with those implanted electrodes on my peripheral nerves over here. I put both of my arms into the screen right over here, and then I would do bilateral movements, right? So I would try to move my fingers like this. The camera is picking up the joint angles and the positions on my intact hand. The nerve data is being recorded from my amputated side, right? And now we can make a correlation. We can do the mapping. We can use TensorFlow or any other machine learning algorithm to determine like this is the nerve data mapping onto the joint angles of the opposite hand. So next time you do that, we can make the bionic hand do the same thing.
So even magnitude of
the force?
Yeah.
Yes. We're not exactly sure what that mapping is though. And that's something that we've got to figure out. Yeah. And that's the same goes for the sensory feedback. Like when you touch the fingers and you can stimulate the nerves and make it feel like it's coming from your hands, but we don't know what that mapping is. And we've got to actually determine like basically what what kind of current, what kind of waveform, what kind of like all those parameters to make it always feel like it's coming from your fingertip and like with a certain amount of pressure or magnitude or of sensation. Yeah.
So amazing technology. I wanted to actually congratulate you and all of that.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I'm an MD PhD, so I don't get to do all the cool work that you're doing. But I do appreciate it. My question is regarding the logistics actually. So how did you get it to be sponsored by Medicare? So the cost of production versus the cost of availability to the patients and
Yeah, so the question was, is how did we actually get it covered by Medicare? And honestly, what it came down to was the price point. That was like the major driving factor, right? And so, for example, the Medicare will pay for a specific code $31,000 for a hand like ours, right? And that includes all the clinicians' fees and all of that stuff. And so other hands before ours came along were like 26 to 32,000 to the clinician, and then the clinician would have to like double that. So in order to like make up their costs, so it was like around 50 to 60K. Medicare says, no, we're only going to cover 31K. We're not going to pay for it, right? So we were able to get our price down to like 15K. And then because of that, Medicare was like, oh, we will pay for that for sure. And the clinicians could then charge 31K for it. And that's how we're able to get it under Medicare primarily. Yeah. Thank you.
so how many people are working for you right now?
So we have 7 full-time people in San Diego. And so we're doing this equity crowd fundraise so that we can start hiring more people to come in so we can do the implanted electrodes, the osseointegration, and then just really turn San Diego into the bionics capital of the world.
And are they mostly coding computer programmer,
So,
or are there material scientists in there, or
so we've got a couple of mechanical engineers, an electrical engineer / computer engineer who does like the coding and all the circuit work. And then our director of operations handles the manufacturing. Our clinical support manager, she has a doctorate in physical therapy, but also a master's from here in bioengineering. So it's like a kind of like nice clinical / engineering degree in particular. And so right now, I mean, we're a very small team, so we cover like all the bases across all 7 of us. And then we're going to start building all of that back and hire more engineers in January and yeah, start working on. Yeah, it's a really exciting time for us.
Fantastic talk, as everyone has already told you, but I was curious on, do you have different hand sizes to where if there's a child that needs it, or someone that might be a little bit smaller, maybe they're already fully developed, so they don't have to worry about new hands as they're growing, especially when you're using one hand to map the motion now on the other one.
Yeah.
And if they're taking the spatial position of a small hand, but the hand is double in size.
Yeah, so we have 2 sizes currently. And so we have a small and a large. The small is 50th percentile adult female size, and then the large is 50th percentile adult male size. And the biggest difference is actually just the finger length and the finger width. The palms are actually like halfway in between both male and female 50th percentile in particular. That made us able to manufacture these much more easily. Yeah, and so we've had patients as young as 10 use our hand all the way to 80-year-olds. And so it's like everywhere in between. And a lot of the younger kids are willing to, like, you know, they'll grow into it. And so and we usually recommend 13 and above for our hand. So the small one is about like teenage size, and then like and then as you grow into, you can switch over to the large size itself. We are going to be working on a hand that's even smaller, like a 25th percentile adult female sized hand that could be used for like even more pediatric patients, like under 13 as well, and just smaller people in general. And so that's going to take some development to do, but then you'd have those 3 different sizes that you would be able to go between. Yeah.
Is there any way for the machine learning algorithm to continue training after that initial training exercise?
Potentially. The trickiest part is detecting or it's labeling the data, right? Like how do you know that that's what you wanted it to do, right? And that's always tricky with supervised learning algorithms, is that like, how do you do that continuously online without having to like manually label the data? And there are ways. I mean, that's an active area of research. I mean, the researchers here in Beckman do that kind of stuff, right? And as well as machine learning researchers are all over the world in particular. That's going to be an exciting problem to actually try and like solve for sure. Mm-hmm.
Pretty inspiring what I can relate the one business and part. Especially your journey, consistent passion and hard work. Very commendable job.
Thank you.
Coming back to the question, I have a couple of questions. Like first one is like a follow-up question where is like, because it has a multiple degrees of freedom, like in different combinations. Like how do you make the classification? Like how many passes from ML to train?
Yeah. So the way that this ML works, the one with the hand tracking, it's not doing classification, it's doing regression. So it's estimating the joint position on a continuous space, right? So it's not just saying like do this grip at this speed, for example, right? It's saying like move the finger to this position based on what the camera is like estimating, right? And so because of that it's a different set of algorithms. It's not classification, it's regression in particular. With the current machine learning algorithm, the one that I was talking about, right? Usually we see that there's a trade-off between the number of classes that you're trying to estimate. So if you're trying to classify between like a power grip versus a key grip versus a pinch versus a tripod grip, the more classes that you add to your machine learning algorithm, the lower your accuracy ends up becoming, right? So if you have like 18 different classes that your accuracy is going to be like 50%, right? Like, or 60% on getting the actual gesture that you want. And so for a lot of reasons, even if you have 4, like the most you can get is like maybe 95%, I would say. And imagine if you were playing a video game and on your controller or on your keyboard, when you're typing, 1 out of every 20 times the key doesn't work. That would get really annoying really fast, right? And you would want to like bang the keyboard against the table, right? You want your human machine interface to be as reliable as possible and with as little error as possible. And for that reason, a lot of people just go back to like the 2 sensor method, right? Where it's just close and open, because that is 99.999% accurate, and you can rely on that, as opposed to some of these more advanced machine learning algorithms that have the capability of being more natural, but they end up being more of a hindrance because you just can't rely on it enough.
The second question is, you currently have you were saying that you have an issue with pressure sensor, then you are moving now to current-based sensing. I didn't get that.
So it's not sensing. That's on the actuation side, right? The sensing, we're using force sensitive resistors in the fingertips, right? But on how we actuate that on the user's skin, right? We do it through a vibration motor. And like I said, I encourage you to try this out right after, like you hold the bottom of this and then you'll feel the vibration. With the electrical stimulation in particular, what we're doing is, rather than like vibrate the mechanoreceptors that are in your skin to make it feel like only a vibration, we are setting current, and that's stimulating the sensory neurons to feel like different things. So it's bypassing those mechanoreceptors entirely. And if you get like the right pattern, with the perfect conditions, right? I mean, we're talking about like the impedance of your skin, like how much you're sweating, how much fat there is between your skin and your muscle, like how dry your skin is, like all of these different conditions. If you get it just right, then you can make it feel like, yes, like a pressure, for example, and that's the holy grail, right? But it's very difficult to control for those conditions in particular. And so that's one of the reasons why we're switching over to implanted electrodes in particular, where by bypassing, all the stuff on the surface, all those issues, you might be able to get better quality signal or stimulation than you would as you would on the surface of your skin.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long do you think it will take to take this from like curing to enhancing?
Okay, so I mean, needless to say that there are superhuman functions on this thing, right? But at the same time, it doesn't even come close to like the functionality of like a natural human hand, right? I mean, the natural human hand has 23 degrees of freedom. It can heal itself, right? There's all these like, it's got temperature sensing and things like that, right? And you can add like those sensors in, but still like controlling that is not going to be the same and all of that too, right? So it's difficult to say it'll ever like approach like what the human hand can do, but it's different than a human hand in that respect, right? You can do things that a human hand can't do, right? Like 360 degrees of wrist rotation, right? Or like take a hammer and like smash this with a hammer and then surviving that impact, right? Things that a natural human hand can't do. So in those senses, in some senses, it's what would you say? It's like it is like augmenting a human ability at the cost of losing other human abilities, right? That might be more important, like proprioception than things like that, right? So, yeah. Cool. Thank you, everyone.